Some of you may have read a book, one of my favorite books of all time, called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Grant, you've read this, I'm sure. It is wonderful. I actually consider it wisdom literature. It's full of great philosophy. And there's one bit that I think is just rules for life. It's on the cover of the eponymous Guide to the Galaxy. It's a travel book, how to travel the galaxy safely. And on the cover of that guide are just two words that are wonderful advice. Don't panic. I think this is good advice for just about any time, because I can't imagine many places where panic actually does any good. Generally, panic makes a bad situation worse. And there's a very good reason for this. And now we're going to move from literature into biology. Later on, we'll get into theology. But there is a little part of your brain that I'm sure many of you know about. It's way down deep, and it's called the amygdala. And what it does is it controls emotional response. And one of the things it does is it controls what we call the fight or flight. When we're in trouble, the amygdala sets into motion so that you are ready to either run away from danger or fight against the danger. And so it changes, it puts adrenaline running through your bloodstream, it puts energy into your muscles so that you're ready. But to do all that, it has to divert all that energy from your brain. So when you go into a panic, it quite literally makes you dumb. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody has insulted you and it's the next day that you come up with the witty response? That's why. Because your brain has turned off. When I'm out on my bicycle and I have a close call, somebody cuts me off, and one of the first things I do is I pull over and I just let myself calm down. Because I know that in my state of upset and panic, then there's a really good chance I'm going to do something bad because my higher brain functions are turned off. Have you ever noticed that when you've been in a car accident and you've been close to a car accident, in the next few minutes you do something that you shouldn't do? That's why. It's our amygdala trying to take over, and all the rest of your brain is often trying to translate. You know, you hear a siren and your amygdala fires saying there's danger, and the rest of your brain has to say, oh, just calm yourself. It's only a false alarm. It has nothing to do with you. And that's why sometimes noise and being in the city can be so stressful. And to get out into the country where you don't have those signals happening all the time allows our brain to just calm. So this is, I think, advice for life. Don't panic. Breathe. Always remember to breathe. And I say this, importantly, because we're going to have a Bible reading today that may cause upset. This is one of those readings that is a little bit on the controversial side that may want you to panic. So as I read this, just keep breathing. This is from Matthew 15. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away. She keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed from that moment. When you hear Jesus talking about like this to this woman, do you find it upsetting? I can certainly see why. This is hard to take. Here is a woman who is in trouble. Her daughter is sick and needs help. She's desperate. She needs compassion. And in those kind of cases, everywhere else in the Gospels, that is exactly what Jesus offers, except here, he not only dismisses her, she insults her. This is hard to take. And for that reason, there have been people that have tried to explain what's happening here. There have been some that have said, yeah, but dog isn't really an insult. You know, we love our family pets. And this is nonsense. There is nowhere else in the Bible and in the Gospels where dog is used as a term of affection. And really, even today, when we truly do love our pets, the pet care industry is billions of dollars. I spend more money on my cats than I do on my car. Even then, even today, we would never think of calling someone a dog and think of it as a compliment. Now, other people have said that what Jesus is doing here is that Jesus saw that this was a very, very clever woman, and he was offering her opportunity to show how clever she was. I don't buy that. I think that's a terrible argument. Like, why on earth would you do something like that? Please never try to slap me just so that I can show off how well I can take a punch. You don't be cruel to someone so they can show how well they stand up for themselves. Jesus doesn't do this anywhere else in the Gospels. Everywhere else in the Gospels, when somebody comes to Jesus in pain, in need of comfort, Jesus helps. Except for here. Because this woman is not Jewish, because she is from Syria, she's turned away in a callous and rude, and I would say even cruel way. So how do we take this? Well, again, keep breathing, don't panic. I think there's only one way to explain why Jesus said the things that he said. He was wrong. He made a terrible, terrible mistake. And this is hard to take sometimes because there is this idea in our church that Jesus is perfect, sinless, would never make this kind of transgression. But here, he clearly is in the wrong. That said, I am so glad that this reading is in Matthew's Gospel. Because even though Jesus does not come across very well at all, there are certainly some things to learn. First of all, this woman. She is brilliant. Imagine you have a desperate situation. You're trying to find healing for your child, and so you go to Jesus, and you've got your hopes up. You've heard this is a wonderful healer. And so you go, and there he is. This is my chance. And what does he do? He turns you away and insults you. What would you do? Right off the bat, that amygdala is going to kick in, And you're either going to run away and cry behind a tree, or you're going to fight back and you're going to insult Jesus and get angry. And then what's Jesus going to do? Well, his amygdala is going to kick in, and it's just going to escalate in this terrible cycle of addled brains. But that's not what she does. Instead, she stays calm. She breathes. And she says to Jesus, "Yes, Lord." Oh, well, from Jesus' perspective, she's not insulting. She's not attacking. There's no reason that I have to turn off my higher brain function to protect myself. She's agreeing with me, and she's calling me Lord. A compliment. And then she goes on to say, "Yet even the dogs get to eat scrap from the table." Again, she's agreeing with Jesus. She's not saying, "I'm not a dog," but instead she's offering a different perspective to Jesus' own worldview. She is inviting him to tear down his own wall to see her in a different way. And then what does Jesus do? He responds positively. Now just imagine how different our world would be if people today had the wisdom of this Syrian woman. I don't know if you ever turn on the news and you watch a few minutes of the debates from the House of Commons, where you get one person saying something rude or ignorant to somebody else, and then they say something rude or ignorant back, and all of a sudden just everybody's just screaming, and the Speaker of the House is pounding the gavel trying to restore order. Imagine if people could have the wisdom of this woman to deal with things in a way that is more productive. Approaching each other with respect and wisdom so that we can keep our eye on the goal. She wanted her child healed, and she kept her eye on that prize. And it worked. If we keep our eye on the prize, then maybe we can deal with a little bit more wisdom. The prize is not the really clever zinger to knock somebody back on their feet. It might have a nice cathartic feeling at first, but in the long term, it doesn't work. We don't get what we need. And of course, we can't have a sermon without praising Jesus somewhere. He was wrong. He was rude. He was cruel. But then he did something that, again, I think our world could desperately use. He changed his mind. He saw the wisdom of this woman. He heard her words and realized that his previous way of thinking wasn't quite right. Imagine if we could do that. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own righteous indignation. We get so caught up in our need to be the one to win every argument that we forget that we should be actually seeking wisdom, seeking better ways of living. Imagine someone comes to you and says something that you find offensive. Imagine somebody comes to you and says, talking about Harmony United, you know, churches should not be accepting homosexuality as something that is good. Well, your first instinct might just be to call them a dumbhead and insult them and turn them away. But what if you actually said something like, wow, That is so interesting, and I sure hope that our church isn't leading in a bad direction. Please tell me, what did Jesus say about that? And if you know the Bible, you'll know that he didn't say anything about that. But what you're doing is you're inviting that other person to engage their own thoughts and tear down their own walls of ignorance. That is the only way to change minds. It's through sharing wisdom, sharing relationships, rather than sparking our amygdalas to fight or flee. And then maybe that person would have the wisdom that Jesus showed in this story and actually change their mind. And I think this is one of the reasons that this story is included in Matthew's gospel. If you're going to write a story of your hero, wouldn't you just leave out the parts of the story that don't show your hero in the best light? Why on earth would Matthew show this story in his version of the gospel? Well, it's because Jesus changed his mind. Jesus saw the error of his ways. In Jewish thought, Jesus was a Jew. I'm just going to keep saying that throughout my entire career. Jesus was Jewish. There is the idea that we cannot experience the fullness of God's love unless we have experienced God's forgiveness, God's atonement. Because if we have a completely sinless life, that is almost a curse. Because we've never had the chance to be forgiven. This is Jesus' atonement story. This is the story where Jesus is forgiven by God and becomes a better person. And indeed, this is what happens in this story. The church changes. When this gospel was written, the church had already been growing and expanding, had included many, many Gentiles, including in Syria. And so Matthew tells this story to show how the church went from a completely Jewish movement to something that was global. Because of this Syrian woman who wanted healing for her child, the church became something for everyone. This is the gift of this story. So what are our atonement stories? When have we had the opportunity to grow closer to one another, grow closer to God through our errors? When have we had that chance to experience forgiveness, to exercise our wisdom? It's not easy. It's really not. I'm not good at it myself. I really shouldn't be talking about this at all. But there are a couple of tricks. For one, breathe. Don't panic. Take a moment. Another thing that I do is I always try and be diagnosing. When there is conflict, rather than reacting, I try and keep my higher brain function thinking by saying, what's behind this story? Are there any traumas that I need to know about? What's happening in this person's life that is leading them to act this way? It helps me to separate emotionally from the fray so that I can think more clearly. And I think one other trick I will offer you is when you're in conflict, when you feel attacked, just take a moment, a very brief moment in your mind to just pray. The prayer I use is, God, give me wisdom. God, give me wisdom. I may say that a few times over, just to keep my brain functioning, to be open to that wisdom that is going to lead me away from conflict and into reconciliation and atonement. If that is a prayer for you, I suggest practicing it. God, give me wisdom. Let's say it together. God, give me wisdom. God, give me wisdom. God, give us wisdom so that we can find relationship and healing rather than stress and conflict. Amen.